Low-income communities fight back against developers in Toronto. Welcome to Regent Park TV. I'm Gabriel, and in this episode we bring you highlights from a crucial community discussion held on Thursday, September 5th, 2024. At the Daniel Spectrum in Regent Park, residents and advocates gathered for an impactful event titled Low-Income Neighbourhoods Fighting Back. Organized by downtown Toronto community groups, the meeting addressed the urgent issues of gentrification and housing justice affecting Toronto's low-income neighbourhoods. Speakers from 230 Fightback, No Demovictions, and the Toronto Underhoused and Homeless Union, TUHU, among others, shared their experiences and challenges. They highlighted their ongoing efforts to combat policies that favor large developers over the needs of vulnerable communities, stressing the importance of stronger protections and social housing solutions in the downtown east. Stay tuned for a detailed report on the impactful event.
My name is John Clark and I'm with 230 Fightback. That's a good start. So we're going to have, the format tonight is going to be, there are going to be 5 presentations, one of them at least a group presentation by speakers, and then we'll open it up for questions and discussions. So we have a roving mic kind of a situation, and Gaetan and I will work to get the mic out to people that want to speak. It's customary at public meetings to do a land acknowledgement. But rather than do a sort of a formal, normal land acknowledgement, what I more wanted to do was to sort of make a connection to what we're doing here tonight. After all, we're talking about how this land, this urban space now, is going to be utilised in terms of providing housing. And what we're coming up against, and what we're confronting tonight, is frankly a profit-driven agenda of destructive greed. We're dealing with a situation where housing has been commodified to an outrageous extent, and we're dealing with a situation where the needs of people and the needs of communities are being denied. Now, given that that's the case, I think it behooves us to remember and to act upon the realisation that this land is in any event stolen land, that the injustices that we are confronting today are only a continuation of the initial injustice, the dispossession of the people that lived here before there was a Regent Park, before there was a Canada. And so many of those people, those nations, had possession of this land, lived on this land for countless generations. And since Canada has been established, so many Indigenous people from across the country have come to Canada in order to survive. And some of them lived on the streets, and some of them died on the streets. So in the struggle that we're taking up, we want to include the struggle for Indigenous rights and Indigenous sovereignty as part of what we're doing, and to integrate that into our struggles. And so that's, I think, the kind of land acknowledgement that we want to put forward with this meeting tonight. So I would say, first of all, that we have an array of important speakers tonight who are going to speak about different elements of what is really a common struggle. That we're uniting and a movement is developing across this city that is going to challenge not just the developers, but challenge those in political power who are opening the way for the developers. And that's, I think, the essential common denominator that's bringing us all together. So first of all, from No Demoviction, I would ask Ray to speak.
Hi everyone, and thank you to Gaetan and to John for having me here today. My name is Ray. I am part of a coalition called No Demovictions. What we are is that we are just a group of tenants who are mostly all facing the same fate, which is that our rent control, purpose-built, well-maintained buildings have all been bought by developers with the purpose of demolishing them to build housing for profit. And by for profit, we mean that they will either be condos or they will be luxury rentals, but in absolutely no way is affordability ever a plan that developers have in these circumstances. So this is just a kind of a group photo of us, as well as our like teeny tiny youngest member that has joined us, right in the middle. So we have spoken at Queen's Park on multiple occasions. We have done deputations in front of the standing committee. We also speak at City Hall here. And it's just to kind of show you that we are not looking for just a reach within Toronto itself. We are actually looking for a provincial reach at the moment, and we're even looking to grow to other cities to force the province to make real meaningful change. Yeah, so what is a demoviction? So I touched a little bit about the destruction of these buildings. The other thing that's really important to know is that like more than 90% of buildings that are being targeted for demolition are purpose-built rent-controlled buildings. They are the very few last standing buildings that most people can even afford to rent, even at that with market value rent being so high. And what we're seeing as a trend is that once these purpose-built rental buildings are gone, rent control will be gone in the city. Like, this is a very real risk we have due to the current government's law that said that all new buildings for 2018 will no longer be rent controlled. So tenants do have certain protections under the Ontario Residential Tenancies Act. So that's on the provincial level. They're very small, they're barely anything. But there's also in Toronto the Chapter 667 Bylaw Municipal Code, which also gives additional protection to tenants. What we have is a right of return with a similar rent to a similar size unit with adequate notice to vacate. That's 4 to 6 months. We're seeing a trend of more 6 months as a notice to vacate. And there's also a tenant relocation assistance plan, also called TRAP. Ironically, we didn't make that up. And there's just a few things listed there. They're good, but they don't cover everything. The bad news, and it's always the fine print that you'll never hear in any forum that the city is ever presenting when it comes to demovictions, is that there are no legal requirements for the replacement unit that you're going to get. So if they say it's a 1-bedroom, you get a 1-bedroom. We know that there's a common trend now that a 1-bedroom plus den, the den can literally just be a little corner by the entrance. It takes into no account parking. Square footage is sometimes taken into account. If you have a balcony, if you have a locker, these are all things that you risk losing in terms of the replacement unit. And parking is one thing that we fight for a lot because it's, yes, we want a greener city, we want less cars on the road, but parking is also an accessibility issue to a lot of people. They needed to just do some basic needs like groceries, going to their doctor's appointments, and some people need them to do their jobs. Like, you know, if you want to take an Uber, we can't be asking people from Brampton to come down to Uber us all the time. We can have people within the city who do that as well. Rent gap payments, it's pretty complicated. I'm not going to go into any details about it. Everything that's here, if people want more information, please speak to me after because it is very specific to what I'm speaking about and I don't want to take too much time. It doesn't fully cover the cost of the displacement of the tenant, which means that often you will be renting maybe a $1,500 1-bedroom, and then while you're displaced, you have to spend $2,500 to $2,800 on another 1-bedroom. Most people don't have an extra $1,000 a month to spend on rent. It is ridiculous. So why does it fall on the tenants to have to pay for a higher rent when they are being evicted at no fault of their own? The city loves to say that there's assistance in finding temporary housing. Honestly, with our experience and all the tenants we've spoken to, that's not really true. The assistance that they're talking about is having a rental agent to help you find a place, but a lot of these rental agents actually don't even deal with purpose-built rentals, they just deal with condos. So good luck finding a place that you can afford with the assistance they're giving you. And lastly, the City of Toronto allows a 4% new build increase in the rent that is charged to the tenants. Why are tenants paying a 4% rent increase for a building that developers are building that they're going to make astronomical profits off of? That should not fall on the tenants. These are just some examples. So how common is this problem? Right now, by our count, there are over 100 buildings in the City of Toronto that are facing this fate of being demolished for for-profit housing. And these are just some of the articles that have covered the cause that we are fighting against. I'm going to skim over this quickly because it's a lot of text. If we were here just to talk about demevictions, I would go into detail. But essentially, there are 5 steps that go from the submission of the proposal to the city all the way to the very end, which is that the city has agreed, they have approved it, and they have written what we call a Section 111 agreement. That is an agreement between the city and the developer that says, this is how you're going to compensate tenants, and this is what you're going to build and how you're going to support them. Tenants have no voice in this whatsoever. We are at the mercy of the city planner, who is supposed to negotiate on good faith on our behalf. We can talk about that more later if anybody wants to talk to me about that. Okay. So what do we advocate for? The first thing we want is a moratorium on demevictions in the province, not just in Toronto, because this isn't a Toronto-specific problem. This is actually a province and even countrywide problem. Unfortunately, we know that the current government is not going to vote in favor of a moratorium on demevictions provincially, but it doesn't mean that we can't be loud about it in asking for it. We have had some support from some political parties who agree with us. We want there to be a demevictions committee because, you know, as you've probably heard this chant with other groups, is nothing about us without us, essentially. So why are people making decisions on how demevictions should proceed, how tenants should be supported, when it doesn't even include the very people who are affected by it the most, who have actually even lived through it? So we want to be part of the solution. We want to be part of the conversation. We also want better data collection by the city. Like even right now, if we ask the city for a list of all of the buildings that are slated for a demeviction, they are not going to give it to us. They'll give us a kind of a guess, but honestly, we will go to different groups and we'll find out for ourselves the number, and the city's guess is always much smaller. We need better data collection so we can understand more clearly what is happening in the city, how many residents are affected, are there places for residents to go during displacement? How much is this actually gonna cost, not just on the residents, but on social programs of the city? Because this is also, I personally like to say that developers are like, you know, the real welfare queens because they get to profit even more off of welfare programs instead of properly compensating people. TRAP improvements, that's a tenant relocation assistance plan. That is something we are constantly doing. And even back in April last year, we had a really big win where we were able to have a larger compensation for rent gap payments for tenants. I won't go into details about it right now, but if anybody wants more information, they can ask me afterwards. We also want there to be a notification of buildings being sold, and we want the city to have the first right of refusal, which means that when a purpose-built rental building full of renters is up on the market, you can't have a private corporation just come in and just buy it behind closed doors. We want to ensure that the city has a right to buy it first so we don't find ourselves in more messes, such as at the site at 214 and 230, which is part of 230 Fightback. Lastly, on a provincial level, I think we can all agree on this, we want rent and vacancy control. Everybody knows what rent control is. For those who don't know what vacancy control is, vacancy means that while a unit is not, while a unit is not inhabited, the landlord can only increase the rent by a certain amount, which is going to help curb how quickly rents are going up. Our strategies, we have meetings every single week. Every 2 weeks, we have a meeting that is there to support tenants, and that is anybody who has any questions, who wants to join, who wants to speak to us, they are invited. They're all done via remotely. By Zoom. And then every other week, we also have strategy meetings where us as a group, we come together to say, okay, what are the projects? What are we gonna push for next? We also produce free resources. We are the only ones who actually have a comprehensive document of what the tenant relocation assistance plan is. And it is available on our website. It is available for everyone, and we update it as changes happen within the city. We're also doing actions, demonstrations, storytelling, deputations at City Hall and at Queen's Park, and we do recruitment to improve our capacity because, you know, we're only just so many people and there's so much work to do. So we're always happy to include new people who can participate in whatever way they can. We also continue to refine our own asks at every level of government because the political landscape changes, decisions change, so we're constantly looking at like what can we do to help enact a better policy change. We also track and monitor existing and new policy and legislation. That's part of our ongoing plan to make things better. We do communications awareness plan, and we build strategic partnerships, such as, well, Gita and I, we've been emailing back and forth for a while, so that's been a nice strategic partnership. Yeah, I think that's good for me. I'll let you speak, John.
The next group to speak, which is a group of people going to make a presentation from Toronto Underhoused and Homeless Union.
Okay, good afternoon. The Toronto Underhoused and Homeless Union. My name is Nasser. I'm a newcomer to Canada. I thought I was the only one who had the homeless problem. And in the value I found with TUHU is that it gave me real value that we can work for the coming generations. We can leave a very positive note for the future generations. So that's where I find, I'm going to talk a little bit about the mission statement of TUHU and our purpose. So our mission is focused on empowerment. So we empower the underhoused and the homeless, and on strengths. We try to build as a unity and also build within the community. And voicing, outreach. We try to bring all the voices to the decision table and try to the personal and the collective powers to build on them. And it's also a learning for us. We learn with each other and for each other. The union is about just a little bit more than a year old. And we organize around the issues that matter to us on the daily basis, everyday life. And from that, because that will, in the end, it will matter for us and matter for all of us who have the same situation. And we are composed of our members. We are all either homeless or have been homeless before or underhoused. And also we have allies that support the issue of voicing our concern and voicing our issues. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Alan Makuma. So when I talk about TUHU, I'm home. TUHU has nurtured me. TUHU has been the grassroots of me as a newcomer, whereby I was scammed when I was coming here. Particularly, I was coming for a convention in Montreal, but the friend I entrusted with all my savings, my finances, so that I can be in the convention, I ended up being scammed. So my life began being hard. I couldn't manage. I came in winter. I don't have anything to put on. I don't know where to start about. No one was there to help me. I wish I knew TUHU before I came in. Yeah, at least I couldn't have slept on the street 3 days in the winter. I don't know what to do. Ended up going in Peter Street. I slept there as well 3 days until I have to get inside. So life really was hard for me. I got a shelter. I went to sit-on house. I was sheltered. I was given something to eat, thank God. Within sit-on house, I encountered so many challenges I have never had in my life. So I was like harassed sexually. So this was a person who wanted to have sex with me and of my same sex. I said to him, no, I respect you. I respect every right you have, but I'm already taken, please. And he couldn't listen to that. He said, no, you have to go with me. You have to be my girlfriend. And then I was like, no, please, I'm sorry. So in the end, he got a bottle liquor. After so many encounters of me rejecting him, he wanted to hit me on my head. Then I was like, oh, now this is real life. I'm facing a lot of hardships. I had to duck down. Unfortunately, I survived the bottle because he swung it to me. But when I ducked down, it had to cut my left leg, so I got the fragments had to cut my left leg. Then I was taken to a hospital with a lot of bleedings of blood. I was transferred to another shelter. Thank God that I happened to survive that menace, that challenges that I had gone through. So I got traumatized. I could feel, because we used to stay in a room whereby we have 8 people, and I don't know what to do. Whenever I talk to the staff, they're like, oh, you came in a winter program, we got nothing to do. Then I don't know where to go. I wish I knew TUHU. So when I talk about TUHU, I'm home. It has made me realize what exactly a person is supposed to be treated. And if you have a challenge, where can you start from? How they have helped you? I'm a TUHU executive member on the board. I've been with TUHU for now 9 months, 6 months as an executive board member. I work with All Saints Community Church as a community drop-in worker. And through TUHU, these are all the privileges that I've happened to encounter. So I thank TUHU for that. That's a brief story about my life. So TUHU is made up of members across Toronto and has an executive board. We have about 160 members at present. All union members join by signing a membership pledge, which we created together, agreeing to support and contribute to the union's efforts and uphold certain standards of conduct. Our time and commitment to each other serves as our dues. We treat each other with respect and care. We spent our first months as a union creating our structure and our policies together. All major decisions are made democratically by vote. Members help organize and support union actions and discuss and vote on issues in all member meetings, which are held first and third Tuesdays of each month in Regent Park at Fort York. The executive board is currently composed of 15 elected board members who meet twice a month. The role of the executive board is to execute the will of the membership. We insist the majority of board members are people who have or are experiencing homelessness or who are underhoused, living under the threat of homelessness. The union supports the creation of smaller organizing units within it called chapters. Chapters tend to focus on a particular place or a subgroup. For instance, we had an active chapter in Allen Gardens encampment last summer. We have a refugee chapter, and we have a chapter in Maxwell Megan shelter. Chapters work as a group and report regularly on their activities to the broader union and to the executive board. Then the executive board and the broader union support and foster activities. With all that being said, I encourage everyone who is ready to join us as TUHU, come and we shall all have a better living. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Lynn, and I'm with TUHU. I've been with TUHU since the beginning, and I did a lot of couch surfing throughout my life, and a few years ago I moved to Allen Gardens, lived there for over 2 years, and now I'm housed, sort of. I'm hoping I have hot water or water when I go home. Okay. Being a part of TUHU, to me, because I'm going to tell you what we are focused most on right now. We are creating a space where people do not feel so alone. When we are alone in our struggles, we believe the world when it says, this is your fault. When we are together, we are making new friends, less isolated, and being reminded that we are not alone. We are teaching ourselves how to organize. We are low barrier, and most who are sitting at our table have not been involved in advocacy before. We are often reminding each other that bridging the division made within homelessness and underhoused class are making us stronger. A society that thrives when the poor have no power will segregate and convince us that each other is the enemy. Refugees, drug dealers, housed, disabled, shelter users, and seniors. When in fact, we are coming together across these lines, building bridges with each other. We will not be dubbed into thinking each other is the enemy. When the system is rigged against all of us. We are in this together, and the union symbolizes that in all we do, we are working to actively build bonds and create strong unity within our community. This, in turn, increases our collective powers.
Hi, I'm Angie. I'm just going to wrap us up from TUHU. Me being part of TUHU has been life-changing for myself, just learning alongside folks and making new friends, and we're all learning how to organize together, as has been mentioned, which has been incredible. To wrap up, I'm going to focus on, because a lot of people say, well, what are you really, like, what are you doing? Like, give me practical examples of what you're doing. And we haven't mentioned this, we won't go all into it, but just to say quickly, the National Union of the Homeless in the US was extremely supportive in when we were getting started about a year and a half ago. They met with us on Zoom, and even their lead organizer from California came to visit and helped us launch things here. So we are not technically affiliated, but they've been super supportive. And one story he told us, Janice, I know you're waiting for this because I talk about it a lot. One story he told us as a very grounding story for us was, he said when they were starting the Chicago chapter of the NUH, you know, they went in and they were at a shelter and they said, okay, what should we focus on? And he's like, you know, I thought we're going to talk about the big stuff. We're going to talk about politics. We're going to talk about homelessness. And he said, everybody in the room said toilet paper. And he said, and then he's like, what? And they said, what's happening at our shelter is that they're rationing the toilet paper. They're giving people only a certain amount of squares per day. And he said, this is what mattered to people, toilet paper, right? And they said, we do care about the big stuff, but right now what's affecting us, what's making our life undignified right now, is that we don't have enough toilet paper. So they started organizing around that issue, right? They wrote a letter to the overseeing organization of that shelter. They went to the media, and sure enough, it worked. And honestly, that's been a real guiding light for us, just this toilet paper story, because we're really inspired by, you know what does it look like to just ask each other, what is actually affecting us right now? Like right now. And so in Allen Gardens, as it's been mentioned, we had a chapter there. what is it affecting us right now? Obviously that's homelessness, we're doing that stuff, but it's also like safety. Safety was a huge thing that was mentioned. So the chapter in Allen Gardens last year organized around, for us to be safe, that doesn't look like calling the police, because that threatens our security here, and they could use that against us. So for us to be safe, it means us learning how to defend ourselves. So we had self-defense classes in the park, and that was all organized by chapter members saying, this is what will work for us, this is what we need, and this is what we want. Right now in Maxwell Meagan, our chapter there is really exciting and growing, and it's really focused on, again, like what's the day-to-day stuff. There's no dividers in the shower, so that's one of the things that the union has won around getting that up there. And they have now a system of representatives from the union in the shelter are accompanying folks that have complaints that are too afraid to talk about those complaints to the management. So really exciting kind of on the ground stuff is what we're really, really focused on. We have done a larger action in the winter. You might have seen in the downtown east, we covered luxury development signs with the words of people experiencing homelessness that answered the question, what does home mean to you? So when you saw those signs, instead of seeing the luxury, like multi-million-dollar information, you saw who needs home and what does that mean to them? So we're trying to do things on the ground that really matter to our members, and we're having a lot of fun, and we're building a lot of community, which is really exciting. So we thank you so much for this. We're learning so much as well, so thank you. I'm excited to hear from the others, and no Demovictions is awesome, so thank you for that. And we have information in the back, so we'll talk to you after. Thank you so much.
Next, I want to bring up and introduce Waleed Kalogi from from Regent Park Residents Association.
Thank you, John. So I just want to say that I wish I was here from all the way in the beginning to the end, because this is such an important conversation, and it's such a timely conversation. We're all advocating for affordable housing. And what affordable housing means to me, it's a basic human right. So I want everyone to understand that before we get started with this presentation. Next, I want everyone to scan that QR code. You're going to get access to this entire presentation. So you can watch it at home, you can share it with family, you can email the link. But this is going to tell a story of how our community started off as a 100% social housing community. Now we're at 70% market, 30% TCHC, and the efforts of the Neighborhood Association to strike balance of 50-50. 50% social housing, 50% market. And what this presentation is also going to cover is the definition of affordable housing according to the city, so we're all going to understand that. And secondly, we're going to go through the process by which the approval of the rezoning application happened. What did it actually say? And then move on to the appeals process. I will reference the OLT number, so you can Google it. You can read the report by yourself. You're going to learn a lot today. And what you're going to learn is that we are a resilient community, and there's some last steps that we're going to discuss together as a community, and what can we do to protect affordable housing. And when I say affordable housing, I mean rent geared to income. So everyone say rent geared to income, okay? So let's never fall for the tricks of for-profit developers that start making the distinction between affordable housing and deeply affordable housing, right? I've asked so many of us to stop using that term, because there's one definition of affordable housing, and it's based on income, okay? So now, if you can't, thank you so much. So I just want you to note, the case that I'm gonna be talking about is OLT case number 2400126, which is the case related to the appeal. of the rezoning application. Okay, move on to the next slide. So what's the definition? It's pretty simple. It's based on income, and it's important for you to know this because this is in the city's own website. This is the most up-to-date definition that actually also exists provincially. So there's at least a common understanding by most folks in government that affordable housing must be based on income. Okay? And that's when it comes to elected officials and what has passed within government. But this will tell you a different story, what really actually happens on the ground, okay? So that's the definition, and it's in your slide deck, by the way, okay, when you scan it. So let's move on to the next piece. So here's a timeline, and this is an important timeline. Now everyone can hear me better, I hope. So on November 10, 2021, this definition was approved. It's called OPA 558. Say it with me. OPA 558, right? That defines affordable housing based on income. On December 13th, something strange happened. And that is, there was an appeal by some greedy developers. They actually all had the same lawyer, which is interesting, so they colluded in their legal expenses, but they wanted to undermine the definition of affordable housing from one that's based on income to one that's based on market. Okay, and that's dangerous, right? So that's what they tried to do. But guess what? There was a coalition of advocates, housing advocates, supported by residents associations as well. So the Coalition for Equitable and Inclusive Development basically took charge to push back against that appeal. And we raised awareness. So I had interviews on CTV and CBC and and the Toronto Star. So there was a lot of media coverage over this stupid, greedy attempt to prevent the application of OPA 558, which is affordable housing based on income. Okay, very important. Now, those are some dates you might want to look up, but those is when the hearings happened. The case management hearing actually happened November 4th, 2022. And what happened was, this advocacy to raise awareness about the importance of preserving affordable housing based on income really hit a nerve. It really hit a nerve with residents across the city of Toronto. And they started asking their elected officials, why are you not implementing OPA 558? And so now, if you go to City Hall, if you go to committee meetings, they talk about OPA 558, right? And that's really important because there was a positive impact with this overall advocacy, although what happened in Regent Park, in my opinion, was a tragedy, and I'll speak to that. So moving on to the Land Tribunal. So basically, I want you to remember these dates because it will all make sense in the end if you're paying attention. February 10, 2023, the Ontario Land Tribunal issued the order that OPA 558 came into full force and effect. That's after we embarrassed the developers and they basically withdrew their appeal. And after they withdrew their appeal, the tribunal made that ruling. Okay? So that's February 10th of 2023. And it said something very important, that it was into force and effect on December 14th, 2021. Okay? And there's a reference to the Act and the schedule. There was specific site-specific appeals that had to be addressed by the city, but that was overcome. Next slide, thank you so much. Now, another thing you need to remember is July 19th, 2023, Tridown THC, after they have applied for the rezoning application, we're basically going through the approval process, right? So it was approved by the Toronto East York Community Council on June 22nd, 2023, and you can read this bylaw. Go just Google it up. Bylaw, I'm gonna say it very slowly, 1325-2023. Okay? 1325-2023. That's the entire application. Everything I'm going to talk about, well, most of it will be in that application, right? There's other stuff that happened afterwards that I'll talk about. Okay, what's next? Well, we issued a press release. Thanks to 230 Fightback for the collaboration, Acorn Canada, Toronto Center Tenants Union, Parkdale Residents Association, and many other community groups all came together to say, no, we want the implementation of OPA 558. We want rent geared to income. We want RGI, right? That was a message that was resonating throughout our campaign, and it was effective. So we'll move on to the next piece. So I'll quickly reference some of the stuff that was said in the press release that's very informative. One of the themes that I talked about earlier is RPNA striving for balance, 50% distribution between market and rent geared to income units to maintain the area's social housing identity, but also promote social inclusion and cohesion, which is the goal of the Regent Park Social Development Plan as well. Another thing is, despite the City of Toronto's resolution on December 9, 2023 to preserve 633 social housing units for at least 40 years. So this is when they started introducing something called tenured affordability. Have you ever heard of this term? When we used to say social housing, we said forever. We want it in perpetuity. We want to make sure it's social housing as long as it's maintained. They now put in limitations, such as only 40 years, right? So that's called tenured affordability, which we push back against. And what it also, this press release also spoke to the appeal that I led, because I said, listen, you can't pick and choose which bylaws to follow. You have to follow all your bylaws. So if you have a bylaw that defines affordable housing based on income, that's what you need to implement. And my argument was going to be simply made that, you know, the city has a responsibility to maintain those bylaws, right? Whether it's working through its agencies or other entities. So we stood at a crossroad where our collective action to actually influence the preservation of affordable housing in Regent Park, and most importantly, to uphold the integrity of our community against the pressures of unaffordability and the profit-driven model that threatens to displace many of my neighbors. And basically, it's about gentrification at the end of the day. So we'll move on to the next piece. So I'm going to quickly talk about the appeal. I filed it on January 7th. Well, it was January 17th it was submitted, but it was filed on January 30th. And I want you to understand how this system was built this way. Some people say the system is broken. I say it was built this way, right? To preserve the powers that benefit from this model. And I'll explain how. So, January 30th, it was in. On February 14th, the Ontario Land Tribunal already made a ruling. We're dismissing your case. You have no case. Okay? That was their ruling. And this was on February 14th. And they said that the reason why we're dismissing your case is the appellant's claim concerned the status of the City of Toronto's official plan, Amendment 558, suggesting that it is currently under appeal. So basically saying, well, we assume that it's under appeal. What date is this, my friends? February 14th, 2024. What happened in February of 2023? Who remembers this? What happened a year earlier, my friend? What happened?
A year previously, they had to submit or they withdrew.
Exactly. You're paying attention, my friend. In February of 2023, a year prior, the Ontario Land Tribunal issued an order saying that it was in full force and effect. So how can the tribunal, a year later, not know what it did a year earlier? Isn't that suspicious? Is that in order? Is that just? No. So their ruling was your appeal does not
have a chance of success because the OPA 558 is still under appeal. The hypocrisy. We're going to move on to February, we talked about the February 14th, March 6th. So basically, an extension was granted, and then they made another ruling, and that basically the argument that was made in the submission that we made to ensure that it was not thrown out was that OPA 55 is indeed in force and effect on the lands in question according to subsection 1724 of the Planning Act and the tribunal order that you made a year ago. So we basically reminded them, hey buddy, you made a ruling a year earlier. How can you rule against it now? Well, you already ruled a year earlier. Check your records. I think we embarrassed them. We actually embarrassed them when we did that. And what happened was, in April, they ruled to dismiss the case. And what we basically argued is that you folks are not following your own rules. You are, every appellant, every appeal, you have a right to procedural fairness, right? At bare minimum, they should have had a hearing. And in May 9th, a request was made for the tribunal's April 9th decision to basically be reviewed as well. And we made an argument there. Next slide deck. So, when the ruling came, this is after a review, by the way. So you can appeal, and if they rule against you, you can ask for a review. Look what they said in their review response. This is so strange. It's so timely. But in their review response, they basically said, this is the chair of the Ontario Land Tribunal, his name is Michael Kraljevic, and he said that your appeal is mute because there's a new bill that passed. It's called Bill 185. Okay? So guess what, buddy? Too bad. Now remember, they introduced Bill 185 on April 10th. Look at how fast it took to get royal assent. That's record fast. That never happens in law. It usually takes months. Right? April to June, very quick. Well, it's almost 2 months, but that's still quick. Trust me. If you follow laws and how long they take and how many hearings they have, it's not this fast. It took 2 months and it became law. And they used that law to basically prevent the appeals that are currently in the system. But what's worse, they said you can't appeal moving forward. So they banned third-party appeals. So the only people that actually can appeal are the developers. So they changed the rules for the developers. Can you believe this? So what happens next? Well, it's very interesting when you think about these processes that exist that give this facade that is actually justice when they've already predetermined that this was going to be approved and there was nothing going to get in the way. And if we have to pass a law to make it so, that was what's going to happen. And this is really, really horrible because we've learned that the appeals process was developed for for-profit developers who fund the development industry and benefit from the speculation in the housing market. So I think this is about corporate greed. It's not about human rights. And in my opinion, the system was built this way and it was enforced by Bill 185, which was just passed. It was just a reminder. You know, developers run the city. We get to decide what happens. And what's next? Well, since divisional court is not an option, due to Bill 185, the Supreme Court there's a court of appeal. So you can't go to a Supreme Court on issues like this, and they actually choose what to hear. They might reject, they get to pick what cases to take. You still have to go through a court of appeal. And the court process is expensive. It's very expensive, right? Not many organizations can afford it, not many residents can afford it. So we are right now in a situation when it comes to affordable housing that is more precarious than it was in the past. Next slide. So the City of Toronto, remember they passed the motion? Remember I referenced the bylaws that you can look up online? Right? In addition to the OLT case number that you can look up when it comes to the appeal? Well, City Council approved a rezoning application where the motion's current requirement is that the 633 replacement social housing units will be maintained as social housing residential rental units for a period of at least 40 years. So they introduced 10-year affordability for 40 years, right? Instead of what we wanted, which is that social housing units from phases 1 would remain as social housing in perpetuity, right? So we wanted also for them to change the conditions of how long this affordable housing will be affordable housing. Lastly, additional income-based affordable housing for the 637 net new affordable housing committed as part of phases 4 and 5 rezoning. We seek your support ensuring that the minimum tenure is 99 years and the minimum affordability secured is in line with the city's income-based definition of OPA 558. Because they didn't even commit to applying the definition of affordable housing, OPA 558. That was a tragedy. That's something we really wanted at bare minimum, right? So when we asked the city to work with other levels of government to introduce more rent geared to income. So that was our ask.
Hi everyone. So yeah, my name is Fatin Ishrak. I am a community benefits organizer with Parkdale People's Economy, and I go by they, them pronouns. So I'll be just sharing with you a little bit about the work that we're doing in Parkdale, and also this is a warm invitation to all of you and folks you may know in Parkdale to join the organizing that we're doing in our neighborhood. Yeah, I also love coming to Regent Park. My family doctor is actually across the street. I've had her since 2018, and yeah, I have another appointment in a week, so I'll be back. I wanted to begin with sharing kind of like things that are happening in my life. So this week I actually was involved with the LTB hearing. There was a LTB eviction hearing because I was in rent arrears. And you know, long story short, like the developer could have taken a different route to negotiating and figuring out a payment plan with me, but they chose to not engage. They were very non-responsive. And it led to, you know, me having to go to the Zoom hearing on Tuesday morning. And thanks to some support prior to the meeting from legal aid, because they provided duty counsel if you don't have. I was able to kind of like craft some arguments or advocate for myself a little bit, but overall the experience was quite jarring. I feel like a lot of tenants who don't necessarily know how to navigate the process or even like what things they can argue or advocate for, it can be a challenging process to navigate. Like, you know, it didn't need to be this way. I think there's better ways of like figuring out supports for people who are struggling or who are navigating different types of crises. So I just want to begin by sharing that with you. And these are often kind of some of the stories that we're hearing at the Parkdale Housing Justice Network. Like a lot of tenants particularly are finding it difficult to pay their rent at the end of the month, and are also facing different kinds of pressures, including like rent eviction tactics to push them out. So, what happened? Oh, sorry, my hearing. Yeah, so the judge didn't actually make a ruling because she was a little bit. I think based on some of the comments I made, she's gonna be letting me know the ruling in a few days. Yeah. So either I would have to pay the amount by a certain date, or I asked for a reduction. So my request was for a reduction in the rent arrears amount. But thank you for asking. So this is us. So this location is King and Cowan, and It is where there's a KingSet capital, which we know about. So the developer is building a 21-story luxury condo without any affordable housing units in that building. We've been very, I would say sincerely and consistently engaging with the different processes that the city has provided in order to, advocate for affordable housing. And as Waleed mentioned earlier, affordable housing already limits, the conversation, right? It's not including people who are on ODSP or who are on OW. So myself, Parkdale People's Economy, we actually work within Park, which is a nonprofit in Parkdale. And so a lot of the clients and people Park supports would not even be in the equation or the running for units that are going to be coming up here. So this is an example of the kind of work we're doing. We're making sure that we are spending time in the neighborhood directly. We've been doing different kinds of canvassing and advocating for affordable housing and equitable development. This was an action, some of you may be here, but this was an action at No Frills. There was another site, is that you? That's you. Okay. So we had common solidarity with organizers at this location, which is another KingSet development building that's going up. And St. Clair West, St. Clair West. And I think part of our organizing, the approach to organizing is solidarity building amongst housing organizers and different kinds of initiatives is really important for us. And also it's the same developer, right? So KingSet is plotting its target across the city. And I think unless we all kind of start to talk about KingSet regularly and make it clear that these developers are we have to be united as well in our approach to organizing against them. We won't be able to make a dent, and a lot stacked against us. So, we also spend a lot of time at Queen and Jameson. Anyone know that, familiar with that area? Okay. So we've been doing organizing around the Tim Hortons area directly, and we've also begun to do canvassing on Jameson Avenue, particularly in the different buildings, which is the whole street is all renters predominantly. This is another event that we were at, which was the action organized by 230 Fightback at Dundas and Sherborne this past June. So thank you again to all the folks who are continuing to organize these spaces. This was also, I think, particularly for a lot of Parkdale tenants and residents came to this action as well, and I think it was a important way for them to connect the dots, and also if they didn't know about it, they learned more about it. So in that kind of spirit, we're also organizing a community barbecue on September 22nd. It's called Eat KingSet and Hot Dogs. So the location is gonna be confirmed by tomorrow or day after, but this is just to save the date. So please, if you're all invited to join us. And we're gonna be, one of the things we're thinking is maybe doing a walking tour to the site, so that we'll go from the barbecue to the location together. I'll go briefly about what kind of the history to the organizing work that we've been doing. So there's a Parkdale Community Benefits Framework that's been in effect since 2018. This kind of provides some guiding principles for our approach to organizing and what we mean when we talk about development without displacement. So affordable housing is one component of it, and then there's also affordable commercial, decent work and community assets, which kind of collectively make up the kind of community benefits that we can ask for, right? So I think Regent Park, for example, this space, Daniel Spectrum, this is a community asset that has been, people have advocated for and negotiated to get to this. So those are the kinds of discussions that we can envision, right? When we meet a developer and we discuss what do we want. And unfortunately, developers like KingSet are not willing to meet us at the table at all. And so that's what we're kind of pushing back against. The Parkdale Housing Justice Network, so PPE is Parkdale People's Economy, that's us, but the network itself the idea behind it is to invite different coalitions. So based on different development projects that are coming up in Parkdale, there's 18 development projects that are in the pipeline that is going to actually radically change the landscape of Parkdale, not unlike what's happening here at Regent Park, right? We're just a little bit further behind. But so these coalitions are intended to like drive the kinds of organizing based on like, you know, if there's a particular block even like King and Cowan to make sure like we mobilize the tenants and community members and businesses in that particular neighborhood. So that's kind of the vision for Parkdale Housing Justice Network. And we've also been doing some advocacy work with the Coalition for Equitable and Inclusive Development. That's what Waleed was talking about earlier, around Bill 185. I will come back to Bill 185, but, and again, I think if there are developments or housing justice concerns that you have or you know folks in Parkdale they have, they're all invited to attend these meetings to bring them to the table so that we can explore what organizing can look like. So Kingston Capital, I mentioned to you, like this particular case, currently the city actually refused this application back in June, which was a success. But however, the developer chose to appeal that decision at the provincial level. So they go to the Ontario Land Tribunal, and then so they're appealing the decision that the city has made. So the Parkdale Housing Justice Network has decided that we want to pursue and participate in that appeal process as a third-party appellant. And that's what the network is currently exploring. So to do that, we do need legal support, and that's kind of where we're at right now. We're trying to secure like legal, like pro bono legal support, and also planning experts who can kind of guide us through this process. And otherwise, you know, this has been an important campaign to mobilize folks around the gentrification that's coming into Parkdale. We have like 1,000 signatures, but also it's a tool. The petitions are a tool to get people involved, and anyone who I've talked to has been expressed concern, but they also feel quite defeated in terms of what power they do have in terms of influencing the decisions. Yeah, so the community barbecue, it's on, I think that Sunday is wrong. It's September 22nd. But if you are interested in joining us or like participating or tabling or anything, please reach out to me and we can organize that. The other site, which is Queen and Close. So Queen and Close, that intersection, there's a 12-story condo by a developer named Scale Development. And this has been organized actually before I joined the organization. It's been a long time, like a lot of work that people have been doing to mobilize around this particular building, which used to be the site of an old gas station. It used to be an Imperial Oil gas station in the 1900s. So there's a lot of like oil and waste fuel like that's like in the soil. And the organizers at the time were really mobilizing to advocate for like a rigorous environmental assessment and also remediation plan, during which the developer committed, you know, orally to including affordable housing for that development project. So no private developers don't have to give you any affordable housing. They're not required to do that at all anymore at this present time. And so currently the site is under construction, and some community members have been reporting like gas fumes that are being released from the site during construction. So this is something that we've been hearing from community members about, and I think that's also another possible like point to mobilize around. But I would also invite all of you, if you do hear folks who are Parkdale residents who are hearing about this, please tell them to get in touch with us, and we can. We're hoping to like understand the scale of the situation as well. Also, if you know someone who loves to analyze environmental assessment documents, this is a resource request. Please let me know as well. Yeah, so yeah, I think different organizing tactics. We have bi-weekly organizing meetings happening every Thursday or every other Thursday. The next one is Thursday, September 12th, 6 to 8 p.m. It's open to everyone. You can come to the park drop-in at 1499 Queen Street West. We've been doing tenant canvassing. We're involved in different kinds of research, storytelling, and creating accessible resources for folks. Strengthening community partnerships through the Parkdale Community Planning Study. So this planning study is the culmination of 3 to 4 years of community engagement, where we've been trying to understand what is the vision for Parkdale that we have. It's a lot of hard work and a lot of, and that planning study is now, I think, a way for us to strengthen relationships with different community partners to figure out how do we actually mobilize around them. And then direct action for sure, and different kinds of policy shifts that are a bit slower. I think that's it. But yeah, and I think one last thing, today on the way here, I had to take a lift because Parkdale, the transit was not gonna be a pretty sight because it takes 1 hour, 20 minutes sometimes to get to the family doctor if I come here from Parkdale. So, and I can't let go of this family doctor. She's she's solid. So I took the lift, and then the lift driver, he was actually, he's Ethiopian, and he was telling me he lives on Close Avenue, and his 1-bedroom apartment is now $2,000. And because he picked me up from my building, which is on Jameson, he was saying that, oh, I actually looked at this building for rent at the time. And I said, oh, well, 1 bedroom right now is $2,250 for my building. And so yeah, these are the stories that, I think a lot of times people, these are the common stories that we have and we talk about on the ground. And a lot of people are struggling, and a lot of people are experiencing food insecurity. If you want to see Parkdale, you should come Friday at 4 or 5 p.m. outside the Parkdale Food Bank. That line is very long, and and these are people coming from far. There's people coming from Scarborough to the Parkdale Food Bank to access food. So the crisis is not unique to Parkdale, but I think Parkdale is a ground. It's like a battleground right now. So anything that we do, any wins that we have in Parkdale, will also send a message to the rest of the city that we need to mobilize. So thank you so much for your time, and I'm happy to connect with all of you. Take care.
Finally, Gaetan Ru is going to speak for 2:30 Fightback.
What time is it? Not too bad. How are people feeling? Do you want to stand for 2 seconds to stretch, or are you okay? You're fine? Okay. Let me know after 10 minutes. So, yeah, my name's Gaetan. I'm a member of 230 Fightback. 230 Fightback formed about almost 2 years ago. And just so you know, many of the people who are involved in 230 Fightback are actually ex-Ontario Coalition Against Poverty people, and some of us have 30 to 40 years of experience in organizing at the Dundas and Sherbourne area. The reason we came together was because last fall we heard that Kingside Capital had put an application to build a condo tower on 214-230 Sherbourne. The history of 214-230 Sherbourne, I'm just going to give you some important facts very quickly. It was home to 3 rooming houses for decades. The properties were bought up between 1986 and 1996 for $53 million. And the OCAP began a campaign in 2013 to try and get the city to expropriate or buy the properties to build social housing on it. And the owners, the Tininjas, refused to sell to the city, and the city wouldn't expropriate. Finally, things came to a head in March of 2022, and the city actually was able to bid on the properties, but was outbid by Kingside Capital. Kingside Capital paid $53 million for that property. And as a result of that, we lost at that point, we thought we'd lost the possibility of building social housing on the site. And a little while later, we found out about this this proposal application and said, like, I don't know if I can swear tonight. I said like hell, are we going to let a condo be built at 214, 230? And some of us formed the group. And the reason that fight is important is because as people who live here or have been around here know, it's one of the oldest working class neighborhoods, and we've seen over the last 3 or 4 decades this transformation, including what's happening in Regent Park, by the way, this transformation across the downtown east that is literally displacing people from the neighborhood. Historically, people have always come to this neighborhood where they were homeless, looking for work, and they were received. Also, if you walk around the neighborhood, as you know, you'll find all kinds of services, still not enough. And whether it's a community health center, safe drugs, consumption site, whether it's a drop-in or soup kitchen, there's a lot going around. But all of that is threatened right now, greatly threatened. If you walk along the Dundas East Corridor from Sherbourne to Church Street, there are developers like I think what do they call it? They're called Kingset, Menkes, Metropia, Starlight, Pembroke. Yeah. So you'll see these names around. So we estimate that about $4 to $5 billion has been invested along that stretch by developers. We're talking about 11 condo developments. It's outrageous in terms of what we're seeing there. And for us, Dundas and Sherbourne is the last corner that these developers have failed to develop yet. They're buying up the land, but they haven't developed yet. So we're saying this is a line in the sand. The kinds of tactics that we've used over the last year and a half is we've actually gone to Kingset Capital's offices on the 37th floor. We've protested at John Love, who's the CEO of Kingset. They own, I think, 60% of the Royal York. He was getting an award. We had about 67 people come out to protest out there. And our demand is very simple. We want Kingset to give up that land and give it back to the city, or to sell it to the city. So, and people have to understand that Kingset Capital has a business history with the city. The city gives them contracts. When we first heard about what happened, we asked ourselves, why the hell did Kingset Capital bid against the city in March of 2000, knowing damn well that the city wanted that property to build social housing? And we called them on that when we met with them and stuff. And last year, they offered the land to the city. And the city, apparently negotiations have been going on for about a year right now. And where things are at right now is the city doesn't want to pay the amount that Kingset wants, and Kingset doesn't want less money. So they're being really greedy. And of course, they could come together and make deals. Kingset Capital just got in January $10 million from the city in tax incentives to build some so-called affordable housing. So where are things at now? You'll see on the chairs, there's a meeting that's going to happen on September 25th at the Toronto and East York Community Council. It's important that we show up outside, particularly in a strong demonstration, to say to the councillor on that committee that they say no to Kingset Capital. And it's a hard fight, because these councillors are not in the habit of saying no to these people. And it's really, really, really heartbreaking and difficult to watch these community meetings, council meetings, as project after project after project is rubber stamp. So we want people to be there. We want to send a clear message to say that they want them to say no. But more importantly, we want them to understand that there will be no condo being built at Dundas and Sherbourne. the city councilors and the mayor who has refused to meet with us, has never met with us. You know, the message we want to send them, if you go ahead with this application and rubber stamp it, you're in for a fight. That's our message to them. And just this summer, what we did for the first time in a long time, 13 years ago, OCAP went and we changed the lock on the gate. We put our lock in, and we took over the empty land for about 5 hours till we got turfed out. Just this summer again, almost like 11 years later, we took part of that fence down, and we fed people. And we had music. It was like a kind of a block party. And for the first time in 11 years, that piece of land was alive. It had people on it. It had a purpose. It has sat empty for 16 years. 16 years. It's a shame. It's criminal. And Chris Moyes, Olivia Chow, all of these councillors know what's going on there, and they know how badly we need that housing. You met some of those people today, whether it's Lynn or some of the others, who desperately need housing. And how dare they allow that to stay empty for 16 years. So we're asking people, I'm going to end on this, we're asking people, one, is to come out on the 25th. But also we're having an event on September 10th, because part of our struggle is not just this local struggle against KingSett, but really is to look at this idea of what these developers are doing to our communities. That's the larger picture, because that picture is not just at Dundas, at Sherbourne, but it's across Canada. It's in Parkdale, you know, it's in Jane and Fitch, it's everywhere. And this fight, although it's a local fight at 214, 230, it's actually a national fight. And a lot of those developers and a lot of these people who fund these people who buy up these buildings that then people are evicted from, whether it's 25 St. Mary's, where 700 people are getting evicted. And the building is perfectly okay. 135 Isabella, where I is from. All of that is happening. So we're going to go there on September 10th at 12 o'clock. Some of the same people who are speaking today will be speaking again at that meeting. And we want to have a nice, loud demonstration to tell these people to keep their hands off our neighborhoods. And lastly, I just want to say the thing that we really need in the end is we need for all three levels of governments to stop giving these companies public money to build for-profit housing. That has to stop immediately. That has to stop immediately. And secondly and lastly, we have to deal around the rent control, and we have to be rent geared to income housing across Canada, across every municipalities, and we have to house our people. Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also follow us on social media, and for more information, check out our website.